Hey, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we were talking about Access 365 that we would get from school, and then we can also download the Access from the website.
All right.
Which one do you prefer? The one
That
from the website?
doesn't matter.
Do
Doesn't
they
matter.
work the same?
I think they're the same thing, tell you the truth. Okay, I think what you get with 365 is access to 2016.
Okay,
All right.
cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
One of you that has 365, what you might want to do is go into Access and go to File and then Options. I think it's Options. I'll tell you what. Let's try to do it while you're here, while we're waiting for a couple seconds.
I'm in
Um,
options right now. Where do I go?
no,
To
I'll try. I'm going to try to do it with mine. I'm going to show you where it is. Okay, and I'll
okay.
do it with mine. All right. So let me share my screen here so we could do that. All right. And I want to bring up Access. Where's my Access? Well, I thought I had in my bar. I guess I don't. This is going to be Access 2013, but it should still be in the same spot on 2016. And okay. All right. If you open it up and let's see, where would that be? I know where it is in Excel. Usually, maybe you have to go into a blank one. Whoa, this is PowerPoint. This is an Access. That's why. How did that happen? Let me just open up one of these.
I think you have to go under account.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Account. Come on. Okay, account. Yeah, and it should say in here the version number of, well, what does it say? It just says, it doesn't even say the bit amount, does it? Huh.
It says it's 2013. You can
Oh,
see.
that's it. You hit About Access.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says 2013, but I'm looking where it says the bit. You want to make sure that it's 32-bit or 64-bit. You want to make sure you get the one that matches your machine. Somewhere it says that
It's at the top right there, 32 byte.
Where's that?
Right. Click that up. Open that.
Open that again.
Right at the very top.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, thank you. See it there, guys? All right. Again, I think the one that you download from Azure's site is the 64-bit. Okay, if they have 30, but be careful. All right, if you only have a 32-bit operating system, the 64-bit's not going to work on it. Most of the more recent laptops are 64-bit. You know, it's getting kind of rare to see just 32-bit architectures. But if you're using an old laptop, you may only have 32-bit. Now, again, 32-bit will work on 64-bit, but 64-bit will not work on 32-bit. So that's what you're looking out for. So if you've got Office 365, you know, do the same thing and see if it says Access 2016. You know, or it may just say Access 365, but I'm pretty sure they're the same thing because they came out at the same time, 365 and 316 and 2016. All right, why don't we get into this now? There were a few questions after the last one, and most of them I answered because I think the people just didn't understand what I was getting to when we met. But there are a couple that I wanted to share with everybody. First off, I do have to let you guys know, if you don't have the prerequisite done for this class, at some point they'll remove you from it, and I have nothing to do with that. Okay, you would just be done. Okay, you are supposed to have one of CS 211, MIS 310, or Math 457. Okay, those are all beginning programming classes as I remember. I think one of them is a C class. Not sure, 100% sure.
I think but Math 451, right?
Is it 51? Oh yes, you're right. You're right. You're right. Thank you, Joyce. 451. I'm sorry. I didn't have my lamp on here because I'm afraid of the glow here that I could get. 451. You're right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
What's the name of Math 451?
Have no idea. I have anybody taken that?
Computational math.
Computational math. And what language do they use?
Math lab.
Math lab.
Yeah.
That's the same as taking C. Well, okay. What about MIS 310? What are they teaching that?
Visual Basics.
Visual Basic. Again, now, see, that was closer to what we'll be doing, you know, than the other ones. Because CS 211 is C, right?
C++.
Yeah,
C++?
it's
Okay.
Yeah.
So you probably had a little bit of the object stuff then in C++.
Toward the end.
Oh, really?
Still there.
Really? Not till the end, right?
Yeah.
Oh, my
So
gosh.
no, I went to an internship and I worked with Visual Basic. Literally I took CS 211 in the spring, had an internship that I worked with Visual Basic on, and I basically had to relearn how to program for the most part.
Yeah.
I could read what other people were programming. I couldn't do anything myself.
Isn't
And
that
then I
something?
went back next summer and worked in Access, and doing that programming was a lot easier than doing
Yeah.
Visual.
And that's one of the follow-on messages to this. And I'll get into this. I had a slide on that frequently asked questions that I never got to, and I want to get to that in a second, about programming and this class, okay? Because it scares some people. People come in and they say, I'm going to show you some system. And they go, oh my gosh, I have to develop that in a semester? That would take me the rest of my life with as little programming as I've had. You're going to be amazed. Is this I'm going to get ahead of myself. Is there programming in this class? You bet there is, okay? But it's not what you did in the other classes. It's not coding, all right? It's more about design. You're going to take what I call Legos, basically, and put them together to make a system, all right? But there are some parameters you have to set, and we will get into macros toward the end, where it will look a lot more like what you did in coding, you know? But even there, it holds your hand through the whole thing, you know? There is no need to actually program in this code in this class. Now, the interesting thing is, Access has a Visual Basic environment to it. And if you want to, you could do that, okay? But for the sake of this class, we're not doing that because this class is not about programming. It's a design class, okay? It's about designing information systems. We're going to learn the different components of information systems and bring them together to create applications, basically, is what it is. And you will be amazed at how sophisticated these things are. After just 12 weeks of learning it, you will be developing these things. It's going to be pretty neat. So I want to go back to the syllabus really quick because there was something on there too that I needed to point out. Some people were kind of concerned about the projects and all that, and especially they didn't really understand the things that are in orange here. Yes, those are class nights, but we won't meet. Those are lab nights, okay, where you get to do your stuff on your own, okay? I will give you labs to do, basically, and that's what I expect you to do those nights. On the ones that don't show lab, those are nights that you're allowed to work on your project, okay? I'm supposed to give you ample time to go out and work on your stuff, okay? And I always give people, well, I have all these other classes and I don't have time. Well, there you go. I'm giving you even more time, okay? I'm giving you several hours more to work on these things, okay? And you can see you're going to get quite a few classes between the time I hand it out and the time it's due. So you shouldn't have any issues getting these done. All right. They get harder as you go along. The first one will be a simple single subject database. It'll be worth 50 points. It'll be a lot like the homework assignments that you had before it. Okay. Then you'll get this one that's on relational database systems, is PO2. All right. You'll have a little bit more time to work on it. It'll be harder. It'll be multi-subject. Okay, these ones you'll do for PO1 is single subject. We'll have moved into the multi-subject ones. But again, on PO1 and PO2, I am going to give you the problem. All right, you don't have to come up with a topic for that. Okay, you don't. It'll be something like we'll make an inventory system for ourselves or something like that, and I will tell you what needs to be in there. Okay, you'll get complete instructions on how to do it. Okay. The last one, though, the last project is your semester project. And I'm basically giving you almost all of November to do it. All right. There you will come up with the topic. It will be a multi-subject database. There will be guidelines as to what I expect you to do in it. All right. But you'll have a lot of free hand to go out and do the things you think you need to do. Now, people ask me about that already. What kind of projects are those? So I'm going to show you some examples tonight, actually, to kind of introduce you to Microsoft Access and the kind of things we're going to be doing with it. But what I'm really looking for there is for you to look at for something in your life that where you have data and you'd like to organize that data. It may be something for work. It could be a hobby that you have. I'll tell you one thing that a lot of students do. You know, their families may have a business and they want to put a database together for their parents or something like that. I had several people, actually their project was their Christmas present to their folks. And their folks really like that stuff. There are literally thousands of possible topics that go on here. There's only a couple that I won't let you do. And we'll talk about that more when we get closer to that time, okay? But that's why I really like you, as of now, start thinking about those things. As you see these things, it'll start gelling in your mind, the kind of things that you'll need to do on this project. And I think probably some of you already have something in the back of your mind that you're thinking about. So I hope that works out. Again, it will be due the 28th. If you get it, I really don't think it would take you longer than November 20th or so to get this thing done. But if you are one of those people that just drags your butt on everything, okay, you're even going to get Thanksgiving break that you can do it, okay? But, I mean, the last thing you want to do is not do this, all right? Because you'll fail the class. That's all there's to it. All right, it's 40% of your grade. There's no making this up anywhere. All right, and again, one of the other things I'm being very careful of is the fact that there is a possibility that they may say that's it after Thanksgiving. Okay, so I want to make sure we get the class pretty much done by that time. If it isn't done, we come back. We're going to do project presentations. You guys will have a couple of nights where you can actually present things. Okay. The other reason I do this, okay, because people say that's interesting that we don't have till the end of the year to get our project done or the end of the semester. The reason I do that too is usually after Thanksgiving, I start losing you because your senior design projects are getting you're really wrapped up in that, you know. I don't mean that you won't come to class, but it's hard for you to concentrate on this when you're trying to work on that, okay. I am going to tell you right up front too, I'm glad I thought about this right now. You cannot do your senior design project as the project for this class and vice versa. Now, what I've done in the past is if somebody wants to use what they did in this class as a project as part of their effort, in other words, they're going to use it to help them in doing their analysis for their senior design project. Then I usually get with the people that are conducting the senior design projects. I let them know I'm okay with that as long as they're okay with that, all right? But we're not going to double dip here. You're not going to take something that you've used in another class and reuse it here, okay? You are certainly going to design and develop the whole thing from scratch. So I hope that helps you out a little bit. Again, as we go along, I think a lot of this, if you're confused, will make a little bit more sense. So let's go back. I want to go back to the frequently asked questions because I zipped through that really quick, and there were a couple that I really should have spent a little bit of time on, and I want to do that right now. And boy, how do I do this? So, gosh, I got things popped up all over my screen here. So I want to get to the presentation mode. Okay. Are you guys seeing that okay? Okay, good. You're seeing the titles and all that. The bars aren't in the way or anything like that. Okay. All right. I told you why I take this class seriously and why you should too. Part of that is because, you know, I got to figure out a way to turn your faces off on this because it does keep me from seeing my whole screen. I wonder how I do that. Hide as a thumbnail. Okay, there you go. That worked. Okay. Unfortunately, now I won't see if you're waving at me. So just if you need to interrupt, go ahead and unmute and do that, but try not to do it too much, okay? I got people in the waiting room. Doggone it. Okay. You guys who were in the waiting room all this time, that's what happens when you're not on time. So please get here on time. Jeez. Okay. All right. Again, I told you that I take this very seriously because number one, it's my career, and because I know that this is starting to become something that industry is looking for. And it could be the thing that actually gets you a job in the end, okay? But there's another reason, okay? And I didn't get into this very much. And it's I don't want to scare you, okay? I know you're bachelor students. You're learning the basics of industrial engineering, most of you, or manufacturing engineering, and that's good stuff, okay? And it's still needed. But you know what? Every year it's being needed less and less. And the reason for that is automation, okay? You know, think about it. We had human beings for almost 100 years holding stopwatches out in factories. Do you think we're going to need that very much longer? No. All right. And it turns out that most of what I consider to be traditional industrial engineering, I think it only has about 5 to 10 more years before we don't even see those classes being offered, because they'll be so archaic. Now, there are still small and mid-sized manufacturers who still do things the old-fashioned way because they can't afford the big networks and stuff like that yet. They can't afford the automation. But you know what? The automation is getting cheaper. The robots are getting cheaper. Internet of Things is starting to change things quite a bit. It's becoming cheaper to hook things up and make communications between equipment. We have machines that are talking to machines. They don't need an engineer in between them, you know? So what happens to industrial engineers? Well, the cool thing is we're the guys who are doing the automation too. We're the guys who are out there creating the systems and doing the system integration that will cause the automation to happen. So you got a choice. You could either be a short-term industrial engineer who will likely, you know, become automated down the line. Maybe you'll get to move into management before that happens. Doesn't happen very often, but it could happen. All right. Or you could be one of those ones, and I don't want to say you're trying to put people out of work, okay? But one of those people that are trying to do the digital transformation of our industries. I'll tell you, the people that are good at doing that right now can write their own ticket. They're making buku bucks. There's stuff not just all over the United States, but all over the world. They're needing this thing. And believe it or not, it tends to be people with degrees like ours that they go after right now. They're not looking for computer scientists. They want people who have an industrial background, who understand the value of automation and the role of systems and data in making that happen. And then there's things like artificial intelligence and all that come into the mix too. And that's why I would encourage those of you who take this class and really enjoy it to go on and take some of those classes too. Take the more advanced classes. Learn about the things that are really kind of cutting edge still, but are becoming less and less cutting edge every day and becoming actually mainstream in a lot of cases. Regardless of what kind of industrial engineer you are in the future, I guarantee you that information systems will be a major part of your career. You will either manage data, or you will use these systems to do your analyses, or, like I said, a lot of you will actually be the ones who are creating these systems. And that's one of the reasons I take this class extremely seriously. Now, having said that, what about the programming aspects of this course? Again, are you going to program? Kind of, but it's not programming like you're used to doing. It's really about systems engineering and design. What programming languages do I need to know? Truthfully, you don't need to know any. There isn't any coding in this class, okay? You won't have to memorize commands. You won't have to worry too much about variables, even though there is kind of a variable method in here if we want to use it, all right? And we will at times, and you'll see it, and it's really called referencing, and it actually is pretty easy to do, especially when you follow the naming conventions that I'm going to expect you to follow. Then it actually becomes extremely easy. How do you build systems then if you're not coding it? You're going to do it by configuring it. I mentioned before, it's working with connecting objects. Think about the objects as Legos, but the Legos will take on different characteristics depending on what kind of parameters you set for them. And then how they work together will depend on the parameters that you set for how they're integrated together. And usually people will say, wow, that's great. When do we get started? We'll get started next week, okay? Next Tuesday, we'll start in right away on this, because the best way to learn this class is to just get your hands dirty on all this stuff.
I do have a quick
Yeah,
question
go ahead.
for you on this. I know this may not be common with most other people, but I've actually used Access and done
Yep.
some real programming inside of it. If we do
Yep.
know how to do that, is it okay to do that where
Nope.
it's been okay? It's not
No.
okay.
Well, let me be careful here, okay?
Okay.
I don't want you to substitute the method I want you to use with programming, with coding, okay, with Visual Basic, okay? However, later on when we actually building projects, if there's something you want to do beyond what I've asked you, I have no problem with that, okay? Truthfully, every now and then I have to go in and I write some Visual Basic code. I'll give you one example. It's very difficult to do hierarchies just from relationships. So sometimes I have to go in and actually write a recursive function in order to do that, okay? But I guarantee you we won't be doing anything like that in the class. If you want to do that on your own as extra on some things, you're more than welcome to do that. But I'm going to expect you to follow the method that we're all going to be using in the class. Okay? All right? Good. Bring your faces back here. Well, at least some of them. Okay, here we go. All right. So again, last time I was going to get into SO1 and I didn't get a chance to do a lot of that. I am going to go, if we get enough time here today, I'm going to go back to that. And there's one section I just want to go through. It's kind of fun, you know, and it kind of sets the tone for what we want to do. But I'm going to just jump into SO2 right now. But there's not a lot, even though there's a lot of, I know there's a lot of slides in both those seminars. First off, I'm not going to test you on anything in those two things. They're there just mainly to break the ice here. Usually when I'm teaching this in the classroom, I have to kind of stall for a week because I got people who aren't here yet. They haven't gotten to school yet. Now this semester, it's been kind of nice. Everybody should be here already by now. But anyway, I want to go into the second seminar, SO2. Where we're going to actually have an introduction to databases in Microsoft Access. Now, the first part about this is about databases. I'm not going to tell you anything much about databases other than what they're for. And let me just ask you, and chime in, feel free to yell. Who doesn't know what a database is? See, if somebody did, I'd ask, where have you been for the last 20 years? You know, the truth is you are a generation that has basically grown up with databases. If you've used Excel spreadsheets that had lists of data, that's a database, kinda, you know. But databases range from simple things like that all the way to you've got many subjects and many constraints and things that are subjects that are related to each other, and you could have a subject that has subordinate records in it and all those kind of. We are going to learn that kind of database. We are going to learn about what's called a relational database. Now, I will let you know right now, there are other kinds, all right? In fact, one of the ones that's growing in popularity is something called a graph database. And I'm trying to learn about that. And it turns out graph databases are very similar to some of the things that we use in artificial intelligence to model knowledge, okay? Toward the end of the class, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about AI and the difference between knowledge and information. You know, when does information become knowledge? How do we manage it differently than we manage data? It turns out in a lot of cases we don't. We use the same methods. One of the cool things about the relational database systems that we use nowadays is it isn't just about data. It's about applications of data, the management of data, and even the application of knowledge with data and mining data to gain knowledge. So the tools themselves have become incredibly sophisticated over the years. Again, I'm not trying to get ahead. I'm just trying to kind of paint a picture that, you know, sometimes you don't feel like we're being very cubbyholed in what we're doing here, okay? The truth is it's a big, big thing. And as we go along, I'm going to introduce more and more of the big, big story as we do it. But for right now, why don't you just read through those in part one on your own, kind of understand the lingo a little bit more. Now, one of the things I'm glad I flipped to this because one of the things I get from people a lot is, if I learn Microsoft Access, will I know how to use Oracle? Or will I know how to use Microsoft SQL? And the answer is some of it, yeah. Because you know what? They're all what's called structured query language databases. If you understand the structure and the querying method in Access, it's pretty much the same thing in the other tools, all right? Now, there are some new ones out there like NoSQL and SQLite and MySQL where things are a little bit different, but they still tend to have an SQL type structure to them. One of the really neat things is in the last few years, even though Microsoft has both Microsoft SQL and Microsoft Access, Microsoft Access actually adopted Microsoft SQL's database engine. In this software that we'll be using is a database engine that you never have to touch. It is basically the thing that will orchestrate all the things that go on in your application. It'll be the thing that causes queries to bring back sets of data, for reports to be generated and all that. You never have to touch it, all right? It's there in the background. In fact, I don't think there's a way that you can touch it. Access had its own for a long, long time, 15, 20 years almost. They had what's called the JET database engine. In Access 2013, they crossed over and they started using Microsoft SQL as its database engine. In Access 216, it is completely Microsoft SQL, the database engine. So what's been happening is a lot of people have been using Access because it's such a, not only a great environment for building a relational database, but it's also a great environment for doing prototyping, visual programming, that people will get the thing started over there. And when they get to a point where they think it's something that they want to put out there for everybody, they'll port it over in an SQL Server because SQL Server has a lot more networking power to it. All right. Now, again, don't worry if that all didn't make any sense to you, okay? I think a lot of you probably did, okay? Probably most of you have been doing something along these lines that you already understand a bit about this, and that's great, okay? Again, as we go through this and we start learning the different objects that belong to the database, I won't just talk about them from the perspective of Microsoft Access. I'll talk about the perspective from information systems. And all these things you see right here, all these DBMSs, database management systems, are information systems, okay? Even some of these are very old ones like DBase and all that. That's actually the one I initially learned on. I should tell you something about that, okay? Before Windows, before we had visual environments, we had text-based stuff. We had database systems back then. We were able to do relational databases back then. Relational databases have been around since the early 1970s. I will tell you a little bit about the history of relational databases when we start doing relationships themselves, okay? But don't think that this is something earth-shaking and anything new. There are tons of people who are who've been making their careers since the 70s, creating relational databases, all right? But the key to being good at it isn't just about designing the system. It's about creating a solid database model. The database itself has to be modeled and built in such a way that it makes it easy to build the application on top of it. And if you do it right, the method that I use, it's going to be a piece of cake for you. All right, all you have to do is follow the rules that I kind of tell you about as we go through this. All right, now I'm going to skip ahead. I've got to do one thing. I'm going to do it really quick here, okay? ABET requires that in this class, I teach you a little about data flow diagrams, which I don't get, okay? And here's why. Data flow diagrams has less to do with data and more about the processes that are processing the data. It's a method for you to basically go into a place, say, here's all the way they do their work. Now I'm going to show how things flow through it. And even though they call it data flow diagrams, it could be material and it could be energy. I told you that last time. Those are the other kinds of entities that we could have. Different kinds of material, different kinds of energy, different kinds of data, right? Here's a good example, okay, where I've got a process where they receive orders, okay? Customers who are the actors on this will submit an order. So that's data. Data is the order. It comes in here. Somebody's going to receive it. They're going to create a bill of information, billing information. They'll put order details out into an orders. These things that look like these long pills, those are databases in here. There's a database for invoices. There's a database for orders. There's a database for customers. The truth is they could be separate systems. They could be the same system, okay, depending on how you structure it. It's just saying that when I receive an order, in something in that system that takes care of invoices, I'm going to send the billing information over there. For customers are going to send things in, blah, blah. You can see how it kind of works on this. Okay, we have flow. There is a method called IDEF0. There are many methods for doing this method for saying how things flow. And what you have is you have a box, typically that's the function name, which is the process. You have your inputs, which are your material, your data, your energy that you're going to process in this process, and then any outputs that come out of it. That could go to other ones, okay? It could go to one, it could go to several, okay? You may split up your output and send some one place and some the other. But one of the other things that goes on here is there's limits sometimes. There's things that control how it works, okay? That's what we call the controls of this. What are controls? It could be regulations. It could be something about security, for instance. It could be about, it has to be in a certain format, okay? That would be one of the controls. What are the mechanisms? Those are the tools you use to help do this, okay? So when I process material, it could be a riveter, okay? In processing data, it's going to be an information system typically. Now, the thing that's kind of interesting here is that we could have information systems that are helping us process, but information systems themselves could be the process, okay? And that's why they wanted me to teach this as part of this class, okay? The truth is, in the big world today, the tools have gotten so sophisticated that most people don't do this. This used to be the first step, is that you would make these incredible diagrams of the whole thing, architect the whole thing, and then get into it and start building it. There are some systems where it's mission critical or production critical to a company where you probably still want to do that. But for the kind of systems we're going to do, Access allows you to basically design and build at the same time, okay? And we call that prototyping, all right? Where we're going to actually build, basically by example, the things we need to do. Does that mean we don't think about the whole thing ahead of time? No, of course we do. We get something designed. You might sketch out something on paper and all that. But the fact of the matter is, you're going to go in and start building things. And even as you're building it, you may refine your design, but it's going to be really easy to do that. You can refine the objects that go along with it then. I've given you some examples of an IDEF model that I'm really, I've used quite a bit, called the CIMA model. It is a model that was developed by most of the manufacturing companies in the United States back in the 80s. We were worried about the fact that the U.S. was losing some of its dominance in manufacturing. And they finally decided it was because we were all doing it different ways. And we wanted to get together and say, how should we really be doing this? So the big manufacturers of the United States got together through NIST, the National Institute of Science and Technology, Standards and Technology, I'm sorry. And they put together a many-level diagram of the things that manufacturing companies basically do. And most companies have used this now to do things like planning their expenditures, planning their resources, acquiring skills, and especially developing systems that they need in order to make these things happen. So you can think about this one here as like, if I'm at Spirit, one of the big things we do is we try to realize our products, right? We're building things, okay? So I'm going to have this big thing that says realize products, where I've got all these really neat, all these things going in it, like market data and tooling and materials and orders and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to have all this stuff that comes out, including airplanes, by the way. But I've got all these constraints that go in it, like design constraints and the manufacturing calendar. And I've got all these really neat things that are going to help me do it, like quality function deployment and information systems and databases and things like that, okay? But there's a lot that goes on in here, right? In fact, we can what's called functionally decompose that into other processes that make up it. So when I realize a product, I design it, I engineer the manufacture of the project, I engineer the production system, and then I finally produce those products, and I also manage the workflow for it. You look at all the stuff that starts going between those things then when I start becoming a little bit more discrete. Take it down another level. Let's take the design one. I plan, I generate the specification, I perform preliminary design, I produce. Let's take one of those, go down a little further. You see where I'm going? It could go on forever. At Spirit, we took this down 7 levels, believe it or not, in engineering. And we had literally hundreds of thousands of processes and millions and millions of things, input and outputs that went between those processes. Okay, talk about something that is a nightmare to try to manage. So that's my spiel about what we call data flow diagrams. Okay, I am never going to expect you to do this. Okay, but I guarantee you, those of you who go on and really do master information systems and want to make this your career, at some point you're going to use something like this. All right, so now you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to tell you right now that there's been a real move away from the IDEF specification toward other ones. IBM has one called Rational Rows that a lot of people use, but there is a whole new discipline emerging out there called enterprise architecture. And I am considered an enterprise architect at Spirit. Enterprise architecture, where modeling tools, this is just one of many, many modeling tools that exist that are part of a enterprise architecture. So we consider this to be part of the data architecture to put these data flow diagrams together. All right, now I'm going to move on and get into the whole thing about data and what is relational data. All right, here's a spreadsheet. This is a real world spreadsheet. There is a university in the Midwest somewhere that I think you all know pretty well that had an OA. Boy, these people who are going into the waiting room now, I just don't get this. All right. This is what I would call a data sheet. It's a page of spreadsheet, okay? And what we had is we had a office administrator. At one time, somebody had the brilliant idea that, you know, we ought to keep track of all the references that we have in our department. Okay, so this is an industrial engineering department. They wanted to keep track of all the texts and other references that they had in the department. So they had basically what they call team members. These are the professors or engineering educators. And then they had references, so textbooks, maybe papers, whatever, okay? Videos even, it could have been something like that, right? And that poor office administrator was going in there and she said, okay, Dr. Michael Edward, you know, here's all the information for him. And he has this operations research book that's by Lawn and Durham. And oh boy, we're going to even try to categorize these. So we're going to say it's an OR book, but it's also a linear programming book. And it's typed text. And it was written in 1991. And he's got one copy of it. All right. Okay, here he is again because he also has Schwamm's calculus. Here he is again because he also has simulation. He probably had thousands, truthfully. Okay, I'm not showing you all the data, all right? Then we go on and put somebody else on here. And then we're down here with Cynthia Edwards. You know, oh, look, she's got the same operations book. So we're going to list all that information again for her, you know? Is this efficient? Isn't she typing this over and over again? Isn't she typing this over and over again? Isn't that a bit of a problem? Isn't that stupid? I think it is. I think it's an absolute waste of time. And yet, in an industrial engineering department, they were doing this, okay? All right, let's look at some of these other things in here. She's got author 1 and author 2, okay? That worked pretty good until she had one that suddenly had 3 authors. So she put 2 in the same cell, all right? Some of these, she's got Sheen and Edwards, and other ones, she's got Edwards and Sheen, you know? If I try to do a search, I'm going to have to search across both those to find the guy now, right? Instead of just searching one. A little bit harder to do in Excel, isn't it? To search across 2 things at once. Yeah, you can do it. I mean, the cool thing is Excel got a lot better since then. Was this I mean, if she only had this much data, would it have been a big deal? No, not at all. But if she had literally thousands of records with this kind of cross-referencing, this is a terrible way of building it, all right? This is what's called a many-to-many relationship, okay? A team member can have many references, and a reference could be owned by many team members. I don't mean the individual reference. I'm just saying that book, you know, the book Operations Research, they could have many people in here who have that book in their office, right? So what would be really cool would be to have a table of the team members where they're just listed once, and one of all, where we have just listed once all those references, and we build some kind of method to bring them together when they actually do have a link. Those are the kind of things we're going to be doing. We are going to do something that's called normalizing the data. This is unnormal data, or some people would say non-normal data. Whatever you want to call it, that's fine. This is data that has not been normalized, okay? There's other problems in here too. Sometimes she's got names spelled wrong, I noticed, okay? These ones here that are, that are kind of categories, they're probably a constrained set of things, right? So I can have a drop-down list and pick from them. We're going to learn how to categorize. In fact, that's the first relationship we're going to learn, because it's one of the ones that industrial engineers use the most. So when we get to lesson 2, we're going to learn how to do a category relationship on our subjects. The subjects in this table right now are the team members and the references, but we have fields such as the subject and the author and all that, where we could have related records, okay? What's limiting me to 2 authors? Maybe I could have 50, right? So maybe I want to have, for this particular one, operations research, 50 related records for each of the authors of it. I can do that. The subjects, who says 3 subjects? I may have 50. I may have 50. I could have what's called parent-child relationship, where I have, for every parent record, I have multiple children that are related to it. Don't have to have any, but I could have them, and I could have an unlimited number, okay? Some of these, like copies, okay? We obviously want that to be a number. We want it to be greater than 0, don't we? So we could put a validation rule on that field that says never put a negative number in there. In fact, maybe we don't ever want to have more than 200 in there. Who would have 200 copies of the same thing? Well, if I wrote a paper, they may send me 200 copies, and I keep it in my file in case I ever have to throw it out and bore a PhD student to death or something like that. I could do things like that. The year, that's a date. I want to limit that to a date. Here, they should be 1990. She didn't know. Leave it blank. You didn't know. Why are you doing that at all? Okay. I want it between certain years. I don't want anything before 1800 and anything greater than today. I could do those kind of limits. All right. I could actually put templates in here even to say, like, things like the phone number, make it the prefix and the suffix and bring them together like that. I can make a template to do that. I have a field, social security number. That identifies basically the person, right? Because it's unique to them. Nobody else will have that social security number. So that's a thing that I could use to link to other things instead of using all the fields. We're going to learn about that next week. It's called keys, the keys of the table. Keys are the most important thing that we're going to learn in order to make relationships happen. And with my method, the primary key is going to be taken care of for you all the time, that you will only have to worry about what's called the alternate key. This would be an alternate key, the social security number. Over here in the reference, we have an LCN. That's unique for each one of them. But you could see here that some don't have one. So we couldn't use that as our alternate key field. We'd have to come up with something else. And there are ways to do it where I could use more than one field to be the key. And again, we will learn about that next week. How am I doing on time? I'm doing okay. All right. I think that's all I wanted to show you there. Let's see, what page is that? It's 18. Oh, no, I did have stuff. Okay. So,
And
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The
I'm
keys
sorry.
have to be, can you hear me okay?
Now I can. Go ahead.
In Excel, the keys have to be low to high, or it doesn't search it properly with the lookup commands. Is that the same with Access?
Are you talking about things like, oh, I see what you're saying. No, that's not the same in Access. Okay, it doesn't. The keys don't have to be sorted to do a query.
Okay.
All right. Truthfully, what they put in it, guys, if you've used the database method in Excel, it is a poor man's database. Okay. I really was disappointed when Microsoft introduced that. I thought this is just going to mess people up, you know, and really it's very difficult to do anything beyond a one-to-many relationship. You can do many-to-many, but it takes an ample amount of work with lookup functions in order to make it happen. And we are not going to cover that at all in this class because I think it's worthless when you got good tools that can do it like this. So anyway, I mentioned that there are other kinds of databases. Okay, again, relational databases, I would say probably about 95% of the databases that exist out in business today are relational in nature. That isn't to say that all the data out in business is in relational databases. There are a lot of things that are just being managed in Excel spreadsheets and in flat database files, you know, text files and things like that. And that's one of the things in business, you know, will we ever convert all that stuff? Well, do we need to? Maybe we do, you know. The truth is, there is so much data out there right now that if every single person in the world was taught to do relational algebra and be a database, a DBA, a database administrator, there still wouldn't be enough people to get it all organized. And then you have to have the people that are actually designing the organization of it, which would be just crazy. Database architects, by the way, good ones will earn about $500,000 a year. All right. They also don't have any life at all. So if you're willing to trade money for your heartbeats, you might want to think about that as a possibility. Okay. Hierarchical databases go way back. There are still some that are used in science, especially in fields like genetics. Simply because they lend themselves to hierarchies, you know, things that lend themselves to hierarchies. But they kind of started dying on the vine in the early 80s. There are network databases, which were the precursor of graph databases. If we get time toward the end of the class, I'm going to try to give you a little spiel about graph databases because I do think they are the next big thing. But the truth is, I don't know a lot about them. I know about them from an artificial intelligence perspective, but I hear there's other things in them. The other type of databases that's gotten incredibly popular over the last 15 years are object databases, where the database is actually a collection of objects, not records, okay? When those tables that we saw records, basically, okay? There was a record for each. There were records for the professors and for their references together, okay? We call those tuples, by the way, when they're combined like that. Usually when we're just in a single table, we'll just call them our record or our record set. The set of records is called the record set. But in object databases, the objects themselves are in the database. It's used for things like configuring software automatically. Where we use it the most in industry is in engineering designs, where things like our periphery, our hole pattern, and all that are stored as objects in the database, not as records per se. Okay, but the premier one that we will use and we will learn about in this class is relational databases. We are going to remove the problems that we have in databases by normalizing the data through relationships. Now, I really should have put another graphic on here. Okay, let me zoom this up so you can see it better. Because this was before I adopted my naming convention. Don't ever name your fields like this or your tables like this. But these are basically tables, and they have relationships to each other, and that's what these lines indicate. Some of those relationships are one-to-many, where for every record in this one, there could be many in this one that are related to it. Some of these are many-to-many, and that happens here where members and references I just talked about, there would be a table that actually brings those together. The ones that where a member has a reference, we would bring it together in this table, and that's called a many-to-many between these two tables. It's realized on this table that's called a junction table. And then there's one-to-one, which we'll learn about later on, which isn't used very often, but probably should be. And I'll give you a whole big thing about when you use a one-on-one, when they really make sense, okay? What a one-on-one it means is that for every record in here, there could be a record in here too, but there doesn't have to be, okay? And there's many reasons why you may want to separate out your fields from a main subject table and put it into what's called an auxiliary table like this. Again, we will learn all these relationships through the class, and you will really be surprised how quick you'll get it. Again, one of the things in Access isn't just about creating the relational model, it's about creating the application too, and we do that through rapid application development methods, particularly rapid prototyping. We will build forms to help us manage our data. We will build reports to help us visualize our data. We will build navigation methods that will allow us to go from one object to another, and then we'll package it all together so you can deliver it to somebody so they could use it for their purposes. And I think that's all I wanted to cover on that one. Yeah, okay, so now let's go into this about Access. I've already told you a lot about Access. It's a desktop environment for doing relational database management systems, and that's basically all that says. It's made up of objects, and the different objects link to the different concepts of this class. The first one we're going to talk about is representation. We're going to do that next week. We do representation in relational databases in tables, and there are different kinds of tables. The main ones are the subject tables. Initially, we're going to just work with one subject table in our database, but we will have a lookup table too when we get to category relationships. Those are the things that constrain some of the fields that it's related to in the subject table. Later on in the class, when we learn about other relationships, we'll learn about supplemental tables, junction tables, and auxiliary tables. The other part of representation within the table is its attributes, or what we call the fields, all right? When you look at lesson one, you read lesson one, the first part of it, and it's very short, we'll talk about all this in detail, plus the idea of keys. Keys are your first introduction to logic. Logic happens in almost all of these at some point, okay? Logic, keys and relationships, joins, filters, and validation rules, I should say rules, are the main forms of logic that we're going to look at in this class. I'll talk about some other ones toward the end, but those are the ones we'll actually use in our databases. Searching is done through queries. We're mainly going to use the select query. That's the only type of query we'll use in this class. There are other kinds. I'll show you those toward the end, but select queries are going to be used for everything we're going to do. You're going to get to know them well, and one of the nice things about Access is Microsoft has built a really nice method to help you build queries. Dialogue is done through forms, through controls, through ribbons, through switchboards, through navigation methods. Again, we will learn all that as we learn how to build applications. Visualization is mainly reports. Charts are still in Access, but it's hard to work with, okay? Charts were in there, and I used it for years, and then all of a sudden they took it out, and I don't think 2013 has it, but I think in 2016 they reintroduced them. So you can't, and even in 2013, there is a way to get to them, all right? But what happened is there is another product called Power BI for data visualization, and that's what Microsoft would rather use to do charting, all right? Either that or you bring out your data over in Excel and you do it there, okay? So I'm not going to cover charting in Access, but if we have enough time, I may show you Power BI and how you could take your databases, link them to Power BI, and do charting over there. So if you wanted to make a histogram or a line chart or a pie chart or a bubble chart or anything like that, there are methods to do it over in Power BI. Flow, this one we are into applications. I'm going to teach you how to write a macro. We'll talk a little bit about modules, but we won't actually use them. Scripts and are going to be used whenever we want to connect our database to, say, a spreadsheet. And I'll talk about the action queries. And then the interfaces, how we actually can link different databases to each other. Again, that stuff is mainly toward the end of the class. So with that, I've told you a lot about Access. What I want to do now is actually show you things. All right, and I know we're down to our last 18 minutes, so I'm only going to show you a couple of these. and then I'm going to wrap it up with what I want you to do over the weekend. So I'm just going to open up one of these. These are actually examples of projects that students have done for me in the last few years. Okay, Aziz, I'm going to try to pull up yours sometime because you did such a good job. But I'll tell you what, I actually taught Aziz's brother, and he is just as sharp as Aziz is. Okay, well, maybe Aziz is a little bit better, but don't tell Mohammed that. But I'm going to show you Mohammed's project for this. Okay, I'm going to open it up here. Okay. So he did a system to inspect equipment at the business he was working at. And the main subjects of this database are the projects that they do, the subcontractors they deal with, and then the equipment that they use. There are relationships among these. For instance, a project could have many subcontractors and use many equipment. A subcontractor could be on many projects. Equipment could be used for multiple projects. Subcontractors could offer equipment, and equipment can be offered by more than one subcontractor. He has many to many's all over the place here, and that tends to happen a lot in databases. So we're going to go in now, and what I'm going to do is open up the object form for the table called projects. So here it is, and what you're seeing now is there's a lot of records in here. In fact, there's 283 in here. You're not seeing them all like you see them in a spreadsheet. That would be called the data sheet, by the way. We're going to see one at a time because there is so much data. And it's what he did is he grouped it together in logical groupings of fields. So these are our fields. So I have project name, I have a job code, I have a project type, project location, project scope. Those are the things he considers general about projects. If I, up here at the top, there's this drop down where if I want, there's a particular one I want to move to, I could go to that record for that one. I'm going to go back to the top because I know he's got a lot of data in that one. Okay. So you see some of these fields have these little drop down arrows. It means I could pick something from them. Or else I just enter the information in. And by the way, I could change what's shown in this by clicking on this thing and bringing up its lookup form, and I could add things to it. I could take things out. I could change the name of it. And the cool thing is, if I were to change the name of this, right now it says S here. Let's change it to something else. I'm going to change it to JS, let's say. Okay. Close JS. I'm going to close it down. And boy, that should change. That's there now. It just didn't change it for some reason. But that should have changed it automatically there. And anywhere else that S had been picked, that would change then. If I deleted that, it would say you can't do that because it's already been assigned to a record. I'd have to first delete this record to get rid of it. That's called referential integrity. It protects us from doing stupid things to our data, basically. All right, it keeps us from having errors. Here's another one where I got dropped down. He did the same thing. Most of these two here are dropped down where I have a single pick, but I could have multiple pick ones. I could have this where maybe it takes on 4 or 5 different values, okay? The estimate stuff, that's all together. He's got a little calendar in here where I can pick the date off of it. He's probably got a validation rule on this that says it can't be less than 0 if I try to put a negative number in there. He's got status in here that I could do where I could add to the status if I wanted to. And then he's got fields in here that are actually calculated. He's actually doing this calculation and putting that in there. I can't change it. He's got it protected, so I can't change it, but he wants me to know that it's at 39%. Issues, equipment, notes about it, just anything in general. He could put a picture in here. Attachments where he could attach to a picture. I'm sorry I don't have one here that actually shows it. I'll try to find one next time. But that's the project stuff. Here's my subcontractor stuff. You can see the things he's got for that. General information about the subcontractor, the type of subcontractor, the persons. Oh, here's a neat one. Operators. There's several operators. If there were several operators, he could have a record in here where he just keeps adding records for each operator that's related to Bechtel. And he can move off to another one if he wanted to, right here if he wants to. Same kind of stuff. And then equipment, BAM, ownership, project, inspection. Again, multiple records on those. If I'm going fast, don't worry about it because I'm going to show you other ones as we go next week too. All right, here's some more on that one. Okay, so that's his primary stuff. I didn't mean to close that. Okay, Now he's got reports that he generates from that. So he's got queries that are attached to these reports, and they're bringing back things like the project list where I could see all the projects together. And he's got 17 in here that I could actually flip through. 17 pages of projects. Oh my gosh. He had a lot of data, didn't he? I wouldn't expect you to have that much, but I would expect you to build things like this for sure. Here's his project equipment status. Yeah, Mohammed did a lot of work. This is one of the better projects any student ever did for me, truthfully. Okay, he's got things like what? Just show me the ones that are past due. The ones that, you know, right now he doesn't have any. So it said I can't make a report. There's nothing there. But he could look at the equipment status. He can narrow it down to certain things like let's just see stuff for subcontractors, and then here's the subcontractor. Let's just see that ones, and it comes up with a report for that subcontractor then. And then he's even got some things to help manage some of the settings of the system. He's got a little thing that opens up that I did this. This is when I did it. And then he finally has a thing that closes it down. Neat. Let's show you another one. And the reason I'm showing you, and again, I will show you a lot of these as we go through, but I'm going to show you another one right now. I'm going to show you Haley Kaufman's. Whole different topic, whole different subject, a whole different idea. Well, actually, let's go. There's another one that's better. Let me go to another one, because this isn't that different, really. Rebecca Chrome. Rebecca had a friend who was part of the Sierra Club, and she was out always tracking down wildlife and all that. So for a Christmas present, she made Sarah a thing that she could go out and look at different animals and make records of those different animals, and did she ever cite that animal? So like she's a bird watcher, and here's a list of all the ones that she put in here that she had done. She's got descriptions of it, but you saw there she actually had a photo of those things, the diet, the food chain, stuff in there. It is cool. You could put maps in these things. You could, like I said, you could attach documents, although I don't like doing that very much. There are all kinds of things that you could do to your forms, and we're going to learn how to do all that. She can manage all the different stuff. That she's got the plants here. So she's got a whole lot of plants and that kind of stuff in there. And then she's got some really nice reports. You know, she built a catalog, so it's kind of like a little book of all of the things that they've done together. So that was kind of nice. So they could print that off and make a nice scrapbook for themselves. She's got reports about the different animals, where they've cited them and all that, and then stuff on all sightings that they've ever done together. That's another catalog she built. So now the reason I'm showing you those two very different kinds of applications, but they had the same kind of features, didn't they? They had this tab control where we have logical groupings of fields that we could controls that we could put values in the fields. You actually populate this with your data and all that. You know, there are notes in here that are free form. There are things where we have drop downs where I can manage what's in the drop down through lookup forms. All this stuff. Here's multiple record things, just like Mohammed had. All right. By using the objects that I have built in the baseline object library, which I will give to you for each of your assignments, you will be able to do this stuff really fast, all right? But it's going to take time to get used to it. I'm not telling you that you look at those tutorials and then you're ready to go. Maybe some of you are prodigies and you've got that ability. But you will screw up, okay? I guarantee it. But the cool thing is you just go back and do it again. You do it again. Because you're going to find that after a while, some of this stuff is going to become second nature to you. Aziz, how long did it take you to do a category relationship after you really learned how to do it? Can you talk, Aziz?
Yes, I am. Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Well, the first time it takes you a few tries before you get it, but after that it just gets easier.
And toward the end, when you were actually putting like 100 of them into your project, which I wouldn't expect everybody to do, but.
Well, my project took me about 3 weeks.
Yeah. I'm talking about a category relationship. Couple minutes, right? Yeah. Okay. So Anytime I do that, Aziz, you're supposed to say it's easy. It gets easy.
Maybe toward the end.
Yeah, toward the end. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, again, I don't show you this stuff to scare you because some people I know probably are a little bit scared right now. You're looking at this and say, I never did anything that grand in C. That's why we're not using C, all right? I know that this one that Rebecca did probably would have taken her a whole year to do if she had to do it in C. But doing it in Access with the ball objects that that I give you guys and following the conventions and all those other things that I've laid out for you, Rebecca knocked this out in just 4 weeks. Okay, and I can tell you, she was also studying for other classes and other tests and all those other things. She didn't just work on this, but she did a really great job. You know, and I could tell people who put time into this class, their stuff always looks and acts really good. Rebecca built this so well that I can't mess it up if I wanted to. All right. And that's what you're going to try to do is you're going to try to build these things to be user-friendly and foolproof, okay? That when I hit something and I expect a drop-down list, I actually am getting a drop-down list, okay? So anyway, we'll talk about that more as we get closer to those. So I want to go over, and it's probably logged me out again, would be my guess. If not, it's okay. Oh, no, it didn't. Okay, good. All right. So next Tuesday, we'll get together and we will do the first 2 tutorials, which are very, very fast, okay? If you go out and look at the videos that I have on YouTube for those first 2 tutorials, it's T01-01A and T01-01B, okay? They're in the list, okay, that I gave you, all right? If you look right here on this RV list, you'll see them there, okay? If it comes up. I don't know why this is so slow when I'm on Zoom. When I'm off of Zoom, it goes fast. Okay, you'll see the training ones. Again, those ones you could watch next week, but if you know, they really don't take that long. I would encourage you to look at these right away. These first 2 are optional. You don't have to, but they only take a few minutes. So why don't you just look at them? There's something from Microsoft. There's a sales pitch basically for Access. But if you don't know much about Access, you might want to look at those. It does say Access 2007, but it's pretty much the same story for what we're going to be doing. Boy, why am I still getting emits from the waiting room now? Okay. These are basically the training videos, but here's the tutorial videos. Please look at these 2 before we come to class next week, okay? This one is only 5.5 minutes, and I think this one's 6 minutes. Okay, it's nothing. I'm not asking you to do the tutorial, but if you want to, please feel free to. I'm giving you everything so you can do them already, all right? But I will be doing these in class. These are mainly there, number one, to get across the concept of what the keys are in the table, and to introduce you to building an object, building the table, and how the data sheet works, okay? We will build a table, what's called the scheme of a table, using what's called design mode. But then when you actually want to work with the table, put data into it or manage the data, you do that from a data sheet. It's a built-in form, all right? Later on, we'll build our own forms to do management of data. And then next Thursday, you'll have your lab where you get to watch all these and try this T0102 on your own. And then that next Tuesday, we'll get back together and I will actually do this as a tutorial in the class. But let me go out really quick because I'm about ready to run out of time here. So the files that you want to use for the tutorial are here in this, where's it at? Right here where it says lab. T0101 - your name ACCDB. That is the file that you'll want to use for both part A and part B of T0101. Okay, T0102 will be the one that we do next week where I teach you how to build a subject table. All right. You will typically see also these things that say compiled on it. I actually compiled the data sheet for 0102. If you want to read ahead, look at that and you'll see what comes out once it's compiled. Now you won't be able to go in and see the design or anything like that. You'll just see the data sheet compiled, and you'll be able to mess with the data in it. Feel free, it's your thing to do, okay? But you won't be able to see the actual definition of the fields or anything. You'll just see the fields and the cells that you can put values into, all right? And I think that's it, okay? This is also in L1. It's the specification for the table. You'll see that in there too. It's just if you want to print out the fields in their summary together, you could do that. But I'll talk about that next time, okay? What I really like to do is in L01, you'll see in all these lessons, there's a index, if you will. It's basically a preface to the lesson where I talk about what the scope and some insights about it, what is actually in this lesson. So the specific examples that are in here, the conventions that you have to deal with, the tutorials you have to do, and then this thing that's called 5T that I'll show you in a second, okay? There's also a list of the videos that go along with it, but again, you'll find that in the RV thing. And you also find reference files. For this one on tables, we'll use the checklist as one of the references. And then there's this one called RB. This is over in the information on Blackboard. You'll find one that's called RB Key Summary, all right? You don't have to look at that now, but after I go through keys, that's a nice summary of what all the keys do, okay? It's basically attributes about the keys. If you want to look at that ahead of time, feel free, okay? But that's all in here, what you need to look at. Then there's a section that has the conventions for this lesson. These are not all the conventions, okay? You'll see there's conventions for the subject table. There's conventions for the keys and the fields, okay? So like a subject table, we had in that one, we had subcontractors. In Mohammed's application, he has a table that's named, the object is named TBL, lowercase, subcontractor. Okay, so this one, it says subject, you replace that with the name of it then, okay? That's how it works on all these. The fields will be the name of the table, so maybe he had a field in there called subcontractor name, okay? So you'd have TX subcontractor dash name, all right? That is a stringent thing. You have to follow this method, and you'll see it next week when I do the example. You'll also see it in all the examples I give you, this stuff. The ones in green are the ones we will tend to use the most, all right? Then there is basically the information, okay? This is the anything you see fundamental, this is where it explains about that thing. So here's the fundamentals about subject tables. That includes the keys, okay? And the keys are good not only for subject tables, but all tables. But we learn them right up front with subject tables, and then you'll know them, all right? I've got some examples. I will use these in class next week to explain the keys again, but you can look at that on your own, and I think many of you are sharp enough to pick this up on your own. And then you get into the tutorial. So you have the videos, which you can watch and follow, but then you've got here as a step-by-step process, the same thing, okay, is printed out for you with explanation, with annotation, all that stuff. Guys, I'm going to tell you right now, I have had people at the end of this class tell me, you know what, I could have aced this class just based off your tutorials. All right, everything I needed to know, you had in the videos and you had in the lessons. And of course, with the help of the references and all that, as long as they followed the rules, okay? But they also tell me this, I'm still glad I came to class. All right, because I am not always going to stay on script. I am not going to read these things to you, okay? A lot of times, in fact, after we do this for a while, I'll go kind of slow to start out with. But after a while, I'm going to start realizing that some of you are really getting it and some aren't even trying, okay? And the ones that are trying, I'm just going to ignore you, okay? Because I'm going to pick up speed, okay? Some of you will be bored, okay? I guarantee it, for the first few weeks, some of you will be bored because I will be going very slow, okay? Still come to class. Because again, I will go off page and tell you things about this stuff. And that's where a lot of the learning happens in this class, all right? And I'm going to hit the very end of this, and then I'm going to let you go, all right? But I want to show you at the bottom, there's this at the end of each lesson, there's this thing that I call the 5 T's, okay? And what those are tips, tricks, traps, truths, and twists, okay, about the things you learned up here. Many of the tips especially, you'll find in there. They're color-coded. They're this blue color, and you'll find them, you'll see them in my write-up. Sometimes you'll see them on the videos too. I don't always put those on there. Even the traps and the tricks and the truths, they're orchestrated. So this is kind of a summary of them, but there are some in here that aren't up there. So you want to look at these. I have had people who, after this class is done, tell me that this is the most useful thing for them. After they have learned the subject, they come back here all the time to really get some insights about it. And the ones in here that are called twists, that's where Access may tell you to do something, but I'm telling you to do that. There's a better way to do it. Okay, so don't pick up a book on Access, you know, that you like a Q book or something like that, and take it as sacrosanct, because sometimes there's even better ways than what Access has in it. And I'm going to show you a better way. In fact, not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after that, when we do fields and we start doing the properties of fields, we're going to find out that there's some properties that Access put in there that you don't want to use. There's a better way to do it, okay? So I'm going to leave it at that. Are there any really quick questions? Otherwise, I'm just going to leave it at that. And you guys, if you want to, send me an email if you have a question. Again, if I think it's something I need to share with everybody, I'll send it out to everybody. Go ahead.
For the homework, is it just watching the tutorials for next class?
Yeah. There's no assignment yet. Okay. But the assignment is there. Look at it, you know, look at all the material for the lesson, the assignment, the tutorials, the lesson itself, and any of the references that go along with it. Do that before we meet. You know, it helps, guys. The more it's one of those things that if I tell you what to do, you'll remember 10% of it. If I show you what to do, you'll remember about 60% of it. If we do it, you'll remember it, okay? And usually by the time we get through the tutorial, you guys do your assignments. You've got this, okay? You've got that part of it. Now we can go on to the next one, okay? So it's very methodical. But again, bottom line is, it's how much time you put into it, all right? People who procrastinate always struggle. And people who procrastinate, I have very little empathy for, okay? People who come prepared and I could tell are doing the right things and are doing great assignments and are even doing more than I've asked them to do, you're going to impress me, you know? And after a while, I'm just going to realize you know what you're doing, you know? Again, that usually is about 90% of the people. And one of the things I've done the last 2 years is I got too caught up in the 10% that weren't trying. That's not happening this semester. I'm going to get caught up in the 90% that are, all right? So be forewarned, you know, if you're not keeping up, I'm just going to tell you to drop the class. And if you don't drop the class, then you may get to take it from me a second time, because you know what? I'm the one who teaches this class all the time. So let's do our work, okay? Come prepared. This stuff doesn't take very long to read, okay? And if you don't understand it, at least you've read it and it's in your mind that when I get there and after I've said it, it still doesn't make sense, you know, to ask a question, all right? And again, you could ask me, you could ask Aziz. We are here to clarify things for you, but we are not here to do your work for you, okay? Good? All right, guys. We'll have a good weekend. Again,
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
If we are working a little bit ahead and we add something into assignment that is further advanced than what was actually part of the assignment, just try to get a hang of it, and we screw it up, does it count against us?
Good question. No, I will typically, in fact, even in the first assignments, you know, I give people some leeway. I know the conventions especially are going to be new. If you've at least taken an honest shot at doing them, I'm fine with it. It's only if you've ignored them that I get upset. But if you do, I will never penalize somebody for going above and beyond what I ask them to do, okay? Doesn't mean I'll give you credit either if I don't think it was worthwhile, all right? But where I'm going with this is if you do an assignment, I would always ask you to do this. Do what I've asked you to do. Save that file. And then if you want to do more, make a copy and do it in that copy. the extra stuff, and then turn them both in, okay? And send me a note saying, hey, by the way, I also did this, okay? Okay, just because, you know, the fact of the matter is I've had some people who got so focused on the extra credit and they buffed the regular assignment, you know. I hate to give you 10 points extra credit and not give you, or I'm sorry, give you 2 points extra credit and not give you the 20 points that you need for the assignment. So always get the assignment done first, and then if you want to do more, that's great. One of the things I always hope people will do is spend time learning how to make things look good, you know, making your reports look good, making your forms look good and all that, not just using the built-in stuff. In fact, later on, it'll actually be part of the grade. Aesthetics come into play when you're building information systems, and I'm going to expect you to do that. And I know that is one of the things that's most time consuming, is making things look good, putting things where it should be, making sure that margins don't overrun on printouts and stuff like that. That's the stuff where sometimes it's trial and error, you know, and you'll take, you know, I've had things, I've had applications that I built in a couple hours and then spent days refining the look of it, you know, but that's just the way it goes, you know. So at first I'm not going to be too hung up on aesthetics, you know, but I will expect you to try, at least try to use the conventions and things like that. Okay. Long-winded answer. Is that good, Arthur?
Yep, sounds great. Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, guys, have a good weekend. We'll see you next Tuesday. I will send you a link and for Tuesday and Thursdays. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a recurring one. Okay, so it's just the same one every week. All right. You will get them even for those nights that are in orange. Okay, I'm just going to do a recurring one on Thursday nights, but that doesn't mean we're going to meet on those nights. We'll only do that again if we fall behind. All right, but we will definitely meet next Tuesday. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.